Good evening, everyone. We will go ahead and get started. I appreciate all of you taking the time to join us this evening for our final coaches call of the 2024 season. And congratulations, we are at the end. We made it. The league stat of note that is an improvement from the last time we met is our total TTC hours. We are closing out the 2024 season with over 4,000 TTC hours. So thank you to all of you for all of your efforts in getting your teams out to do some trail work. We have increased another 337.75 TTC hours since we last spoke last month. So huge effort from everyone, and it is greatly appreciated. Thank you for making that such a success. As we look forward, some important dates. So the NICA end of season survey closes on June 15th, and June 16th is the end of the 2024 season. So as of June 16th, that is the final day to do any team activities for the season and anything that is a NICA function. That's the last day to do it until the 2025 season. June 16th is also the final day to submit any handbook revision suggestions, and there's a link to that form there. So anything that you feel needs to be revised, included, taken out of, any ideas that you have, fill out that handbook revision suggestion, and that will be forwarded to our rules committee that will then take a look at that, put everything together, and then submit handbook revisions for to NICA and their rules committee to go over for next season. We begin our coach training season on August 17th and 18th, and you can see that the 17th and 18th of August are our dates for the WFA OTBS 101 training weekend in Asheville. Again, that will be a WFA that will be open to anyone that needs to renew WFA, as well as 20 spots of combined WFA OTBS 101 for anyone that was a level 1 coach this season and is looking to move up to a level 2. The next training weekend after that is the August 31st, September 1st, and that will be in the Charlotte area. We are interested in finding a venue for Charlotte. We don't have anything confirmed. Preferably working with a school would be fantastic. We would need a classroom space on Saturday that we could access for WFA. And then on Sunday, we just need an open area for the OTBS 101. It does not have to have trails or anything like that. It just needs to be an open field. And it doesn't have to be that big. So if you have contacts with a school in the Charlotte area or surrounding area that would be willing to talk about letting us have that as a venue, then please forward that to me so that I can start that process. Then September 14th and 15th, we have our WFA OTBS 101 in the Raleigh-Durham, Chapel Hill area, so the Triangle. We are also looking for a venue there. So again, school-based preferably. So we do have some school-based teams there. If you can contact someone at the school that your team represents and give us a contact, I will reach out to them so that we can begin the discussion of where we can have that RDU WFA OTBS 101. The place that we've been having it, it's okay. It's a little problematic. There's some pretty distracting issues with that, and we want to just find something that's a little more conducive to learning. Then September 28th and 29th, we have our WFA OTBS 101 in Asheville. And then October 12th and 13th is the final WFA OTBS 101 weekend. And that again is in RDU. So those are our coach training weekends. And then interspersed in that, you can see that on September 1st, the pit zone registration for coaches opens. And then October 1st, pit zone registration for student athletes opens. And then last but not least, October 26th and 27th will be our coach retreat. This is not the same thing as the Leadership Summit, which is an online level 3 coach requirement that is conducted by NICA throughout the year. But this is our coach retreat, which does provide CEUs for everyone. And this will be tentatively held in Old Fort. We are currently in negotiations with the Old Fort area to have our coach retreat there. Are there any questions or comments about these upcoming dates? Yes, Elise.
When will registration open?
Registration will be registration
WFA.
will be
Yeah.
registration will be opening for all of these coming in the coming week, and they will all be cut off 30 days out. So you will have until 30 days before in order to register. There will be no late registrations. This is our contract with Solo Southeast. So because of the way that contract works and the way we are charged, we cannot do any registrations after the 30-day out mark for the class. So if you are interested, you need to get in and get registered early, and there will be no refunds. So if you register and you end up not being able to make it, that is unfortunate, but we will not be able to refund your money. All right, other questions or comments? So the way registration will work, I will be sending out the registration links for the WFA OTBS 101 combined course to all eligible level 1 coaches. Do not forward this link. If I have not sent it to the person, they are not eligible to take it, especially coaches that are not registered in Pit Zone. They will not receive credit for anything. So we need this to be, I will send the link out. Those people will have it. It will come from me. And if you are trying to encourage them, they need to look for the link that comes from me. And that way they can register directly. Those coaches that need to renew WFA, I will send that link out to the level 2, level 3 coach list. And that will be set up and ready on the same timeline. So 30 days out will be the cutoff, and no late registration and no refunds. All right. Anything else we want to talk about with coach trainings that are coming up, or anything of the other important dates that are coming up? Whitewater Center for Charlotte Trainings, not really a good venue because there's just too many other things. We really need something that is school-based, so we can have a classroom and so we can have a open field without any distractions. Whitewater Center will not shut down anything for us, so we would just be in the midst of everything else. And this will be a pretty popular time for that area. So not our first go-to for anything in Charlotte. And we do have, Charlotte-based teams that do have school affiliations. We just need you all to kind of let us know who to contact so that we can start that process. All right. So moving on, the Whitewater Windup review. So Whitewater Windup was this past weekend, and that was our season-ending adventure event. Shell, do you want to speak a little bit about that?
I'm not really in a spot to talk, sorry.
Okay. All right. Brian, was there anything that you wanted to share about the Whitewater Windup?
I don't think we need to spend a ton of time on it tonight, but I'd be interested in hearing anyone's feedback about the format and how it was conducted. And that's kind of what we want to capture here, just like we do any other event. Any feedback from the coaches, good, bad, indifferent. It was certainly new, but I think everyone that attended had a blast. Me included. Ton of fun. And thanks to everyone for setting it up. Yeah.
So we will open the floor up to anyone that wants to share feedback, either positive or things that should be considered for improvement.
I'll say I thought it was a pretty good weekend. I thought it was a good venue. Um, my son did not touch his bike all weekend. He stayed at the Whitewater Center, did multiple rafting trips, multiple zip line trips, and everything else but biking. So I guess that's good. The and then several others of our team went and did rafting as well. So I thought it was I thought it was nice to have all that availability if you didn't want to ride. And then the stuff the stuff that the league put together was good as well for all the kids that did want to ride. It gave them something to do. So I think overall good job. Um, didn't look like there was many people participating or maybe many teams, but maybe that's because it was late in the season. But I thought it was a pretty good event. So good job, guys.
All right. And looking at the chat, so how many student athletes attended? Brian, do you have a final number on that?
It's always hard to gauge who exactly attended. 331 were registered, but as Sean mentioned, there weren't, several teams didn't show up, and just athletes that might have registered for the entire season package with no real intent to ever attend. So it's hard to gauge how many we had there, honestly.
I would conservatively say 200 plus was a pretty good number to kind of think about. Wish there would have been a biathlon registration option on Sunday for teams that couldn't get down on Saturday to register. Unfortunately, that was just limited capacity, so that kind of filled up pretty quick. David Larkin says, I was skeptical of the orienteering at first, but turns out my middle school group had a blast with it. Consolidating to one day may have gotten more critical mass. And will you post end of season team awards, or are they posted already? I believe those are posted already. Is that correct, Brian?
I haven't posted them yet. I'll release those in the event report for Whitewater Center by Thursday is what I'm aiming for.
All right. Ryan Daniel has his hand up. Ryan?
Yeah, I just didn't want to talk over anybody. But yeah, I had a great time at the event. I'd never been to that venue. It's been something I wanted to check out for a while, and it was a great opportunity to do that. So I thought for the kind of weekend that it was a super venue for that. There was a ton of trails to ride, and yeah, I mean, I would agree that the events were a lot of fun. Certainly our younger kids, I think, loved all the events, but even the older kids got into the orienteering for sure. So that was a neat way to get kids out and riding a lot of miles. My only other comment on it was, if we ever do it again, I would love to have some discussion about some of the trails that were considered closed to NICA. I understand some of those trails are pretty technical and have some features on them, but a few were closed that seemed to me that could have really been open for at least some of our more advanced athletes, considering everything is coach led. I think that we could have evaluated that and allowed them to have experience some of those more technical trails.
All right. Other feedback?
Hey, Sean, this is Brian Dixon from the Hellbenders. I'm sorry, I can't find the hand up thing because I'm not very skilled
No problem.
at Zoom. Yeah, I just wanted to, I don't think anybody did anything wrong at all. I don't have any solutions for any of this. I just kind of wanted to say sort of what happened to us at that, in case it's instructive for next time or whatever. I failed to realize, I had 17 student athletes signed up. I failed to realize until pretty close, maybe the week of, that all basically 15 out of those 17 just signed up, like Brian said, because of the package. And I think, it made a lot of sense to do it as part of the package because that way it's kind of like, well, you've already paid for it, maybe encourage people to go. But I realized that I was sort of relying on pit zone registration as a barometer of who was going to show up to stuff because it always works that way, except for in this case, which, yeah, it was like completely evaporated on me. And so I was bummed that we couldn't participate with you guys, and I will definitely try to do a better job next year of getting an idea earlier. But you know how communication is; it can be really difficult to get people to sort of write back and say they're going. I don't know if you guys have had that experience in other teams, but
I think one thing that can help, because it is an event that's created in TeamSnap. What I do with my team is, just like any other practice or anything like that, they're marking their availability in TeamSnap, and so that's given me a better picture of like who's actually coming, including coaches, because so I can capture kind of all of that. So that's maybe a suggestion for next season, is just like making sure that people are marking their availability, and you can just send them that reminder like, hey, make sure you mark your availability for the adventure weekend or the Whitewater Windup or whatever it happens to be called, so that you can see kind of in real time what that participation looks like.
for sure. And they did that. It just turns out I thought nobody had signed up because they were slacking on putting their availability, but it turns out nobody had signed up. So it was actually surprisingly accurate. I didn't believe it. But well, the
Yeah.
other thing was a lot of our team was planning on doing that race in Old Fort at Gateway, but then it got canceled last minute due to lack of interest. I think it's what I heard anyway. You probably know a lot more than I do about that, but I didn't know if that was kind of one of those um tail wagging the dog thing with the Nika event kind of stepping on that, but then that ended up stepping on the Nika event. I know that that's unavoidable stuff because there's an event every weekend. I'm just saying, I don't know if that's part of what
Yeah.
happened.
Yep. And then Abby was asking, is there already talk about doing this event the same weekend next year? The schedule is not it's not in place yet, so we don't have an idea for what weekend this would be or anything like that. But expect kind of a similar kind of feel to the season as the season, but there will be some changes and different things like that. Jeff
But
LeBlanc, I saw you briefly raised your hand.
hey, before you jump in, Sean, if I could just address that comment. I mean, part of
Yes,
setting,
Brian.
yeah, so part of setting the next season is doing exactly this, getting the feedback from you all, from what worked, what doesn't. I do think my lesson learned from this season is anything after Memorial Day is pretty tough. I think, heck, I was talking with Brian from Lincoln County this weekend. They've been out of school for 3 weeks, for crying out loud. Like they're all on vacation. So I'm taking a hard look at like when we close the season next season, and anything after Memorial Day we might not want to do, is my sense. And then the exact format, I think if I could find a venue to do it, and kind of the venue survey committee knows this, if I could find a place to do championship and kind of a festival all in one weekend, I think that would be pretty cool. Just close it all down in one place. But again, that's venue availability and things I'll work through the summer. So you're exactly right, Sean. Not quite sure yet what next season looks like, but love getting the feedback from folks on kind of what works and what doesn't. Exactly why we're doing this. Sorry, Jeff, go ahead.
No, that's okay. I'm just kind of going along on that same line of thought, just because the state championship was not part of the overall package deal in the beginning of the season, but yet this end of season function was. And because then we decided to make everybody available to the state championship, that if we do this again, maybe reverse that and say, okay, every race, including the state championship, is included in your bundle. And then this activity-based end of season party atmosphere type thing becomes an extra event if they want to attend something like that, and just make all the races part of the package, including the state championship. I think that's probably what part of the problem was, is the state championship was a separate fee, but yet the Whitewater Roundup was included in the overall package. So depending on how the schedule works out, that maybe reversing that and make all the races part of the package, and then the end of season function something separate if they want to attend that.
All right. I think I captured everybody's ideas. Any
I
other
was gonna say,
feedback?
if you're taking votes on how to run that, I would actually advocate for the whole season being the single charge, you know, everything, races, adventure events, everything.
So all inclusive. All right. So moving forward, we're kind of getting into the season review territory. And this is really that major feedback for the season. So please, that end of season survey, please complete that by 16 June, as well as the handbook change recommendations by 16th of June. And one of the major things that's been being worked on kind of behind the scenes has been our category placement tables. And I did get a couple of questions about this. And Jim Otto and Phil Watson have been working on this pretty diligently. And I want to give them the space to talk about what proposal they've come up with for next season that's going to be kind of submitted to the rules committee and then go into the NICA rules process. So, Jim, Phil, now would be the excellent time for you all to kind of talk about this graphic that you've put together for us.
So the idea that we've been talking about is sort of what is our progression for kids moving from sort of our single lap categories up into the multi-lap and high school categories. And so what this graphic kind of shows is that all the new kids to NICA enter into a single lap category, MS6, 7, 8, or HS3. They can always, a new kid can petition to move into one of the higher ones. And then how do we progress towards the multi-lap categories, MSA, HS1, and varsity probably being our more advanced kids that are doing lots of training, and HS2 being sort of more of a kids that race, you know, are not like to go to races but aren't necessarily committed to training for racing go. And in the past, how we progress people to MSA and, you know, the varsity and what used to be JV2 is now HS1 has been based on this category placement table, which was based on series standings. And a big flaw in that has been that a kid who finishes 25th place in 3 races finishes well ahead of a kid who finishes first in 2 races in our overall standings. But I think everybody would agree that you would want to advance that second kid who has high placements over a kid that has lots of results. So what we're proposing to do is, instead of doing overall season results for automatically upgrading kids to the next advanced categories, is to take their average of their 2 best races from this season, and then having different cutoffs to move those kids forward. So, for example, the 6th graders that finished and that have an average placement of top 25% in 6th grade would move to MSA. And then the other 75% of kids stay in the 1 lap MS7. The 7th graders and would move 35%, or the kids that have a percent placement of 35% would move to MSA. The other 65% move to the single lap. And the different percentages you see on this table were kind of derived trying to figure out, what speeds these kids are and how they would fit into those categories. So that's my initial explanation. I can go into more depth if people have questions or this isn't making sense.
Thanks, Jim. I think that looks really good and better than last year. I'm curious if you guys looked at all about lap times in comparison to this. I know it's probably a lot of work.
Yeah, we have.
Okay.
And so a big idea is what is a varsity racer? What's the goal for that? And I think that is still in discussion. I have my own ideas. I think what we said is at our longer races, we'd like to see the varsity race for the front kids to be about 70 minutes. And then the back end of that group to be about 90 minutes. And so what does that mean? That means roughly 18 to 19 minutes laps for the front of the pack and 22, 23 minutes at the back. Similarly for HS1, the front of that pack for 3 laps would be around 55 minutes or so. Again, a 18, 19-minute lap. And then the back end would be about 75 minutes, about a 25-minute lap. HS2, ideally that would be kids doing less than 30-minute laps so that they would finish in 60 minutes. MSA closer to 50 minutes. Does that kind of make sense?
Yeah. Yeah, I just know that last year I had several kids that were based on the fact either that they showed up at every race, they kind of were moved forward just based on, attrition. So I think this is much better doing an average of the best 2 races with that instead of the overall. Just to make sure that the kids get in better places where they should be.
And I guess the one thing I'm pushing for, and this isn't written in, is I would like to see kids who feel like they've been moved up and don't feel like they're ready. I would like them not to be penalized to, if a kid gets moved from HS2 to HS1 and say, I don't want to do 3 laps, it should be fine for them to go back to HS2 because HS1 already has 40 bonus points. So, and the same thing with MSAs. The MSAs have 40 bonus points for first place versus first place in one of the single lap categories. So I would like to have it be a little, no penalty that if you get moved up and want to move back, that you can do so.
Ryan, Daniel, you have your hand up?
Yep. And I definitely want to acknowledge all the work that you guys do on this, Jim. So for that, first of all, just thank you for all that. I guess my statement a little bit along Abby's line was, I think doing some sort of, sub overall performance is great, but I'm wondering why not use lap times versus percentile? Because of you still could have the problem where a kid kind of randomly did, this is probably unlikely, so maybe it's just not an issue, but they could have done well in 2 races, right? But they're really not that fast, and they're put in MSA, for example, and they're just not ready to do that. We have time estimates that we were trying to meet based on the rule book, right? I think you listed those off. So why don't we just use those? If they're fast enough, they're going to make the time limits that we expect for MSA, and they should be
now
there.
we're going to pound some steaks.
Gary, I think it's getting too late. Can we do it tomorrow morning?
Might be a decent time, Jim, to bring Phil Watson in and share with everyone kind of our calculated lap time backup, analysis to support what we're doing with the categories. Phil, do you want to address what the tool you built?
Yeah, sure, Brian.
Kind of what everyone's talking about. Yeah, thanks.
Good point. Yeah, in sort of recognition of both Ryan and Abby's points, no system is perfect, and that's why the petition process to change categories exists, so that if you have a student who this method maybe didn't pick up, or maybe it put them in the wrong category, having that petition process is really important. but also information for head coaches is pretty valuable to try and understand, are they is this particular student athlete in the right categories? So a tool that we developed this year that Brian actually used to help inform his recommendations about the petition process was just a pretty simple tool that we're looking to make available to all head coaches this coming season. And that would allow you to simply enter a student's name, see what category they were in this past season that's just completed, what category they're being placed in, and then look at how their lap times compare to other races in that category. Do they sit around 50th percentile? Are they 25th percentile, whatever, based on their speed that they achieved in races in the season just passed. And then you can also click a drop down box and choose another category. So maybe you think they've been pushed ahead too far. You can check, okay, well, let me see, they were being placed in HS1. Let's see how they would do in HS2. Is that going to be a better fit for them? Considering broader factors that you know about those students, right? Equally, you can look at putting them in a higher category, and you can then see percentile wise, based on their speeds that they achieved last year, where would they sit? So it's I think it was a pretty useful tool for Brian this past year. I think it helped him made those decisions data informed. It was sort of proven in that context. So we feel pretty comfortable about making it available more broadly. It's also something that we can update during the season. So once you get results from the first race, within a few days, I'm able to integrate the data from that race, and you can see how things have changed. Because as we all know, things change dramatically between seasons sometimes. So it's really helpful to then be able to see what the impact of all that hard work in the off season has been, or somebody who grew a foot and so on. And that, throughout the season, we sort of keep it updated. So it'll be a Google Sheet, hopefully, and pretty accessible to everyone, and pretty straightforward and easy to use.
All right. Thank you, Jim. Thank you, Phil, for all of your work that you've put into this. This is going to be, I think, a really good step forward for making sure that we are getting student athletes in the right categories, better than we have been. So thank you very much. Again, remember, this is a proposal, so we're working through this, and we'll go through the NICA process to get this all kind of set up and ready to go for next season. All right. Moving forward, the next thing we want to talk about is team expansion and transition planning. So Brian and I would like to meet with large composite teams at a minimum, if not all teams, to discuss sort of the way forward for not only their expansion, but their transition. So expansion to school-based teams, and then transition to new head coaches, new team directors, all of that sort of thing, to make sure that we're all sort of like mindful and aware of the process moving forward, and what direction we all need to be going into. Brian and I will be reaching out, especially to the larger composite teams, to set up some times to have some virtual meetings with everyone. And if you are interested in sort of more information about this process, there are links on our website. So when you go to Coach Resources, you can see that there is a composite team expansion split playbook. So that will be really useful in kind of the path forward for your composite team, and then succession planning for team leadership and head coaches, as well as a succession planning worksheet. So some things for you to be mindful of and planning for this off season, moving into the season that's coming up. Our off-season communication, we will continue to do the monthly podcast and single track times through September. So that will be each month, once a month. And then anticipate coaches calls again, starting up in September. And we will be kind of sending out information like we do normally for when the coaches calls will start back up. Coach training, we've seen the dates. Please make sure you are talking with your level 1 coaches and asking them to be mindful of that registration that will be getting sent out in the next week. And then the other thing that we want to talk about is our coach supporter expansion plan overview. So part of our plan for helping large composite teams to move into significantly more school-based teams, and also just teams in general to facilitate greater training for level 2 coaches, is that we will be beginning a program of having coach supporters per team. So we're going to be looking at some of the larger teams, and we'll be reaching out to you to ask head coaches and team directors to identify 1 or 2 people that will be team-based coach supporters for that team. And then we will be talking through the process of setting up team-based OTBS 101s and kind of what that will look like and that sort of thing. This will not be starting until after our coach training season that will end in October. But this is one of those ways, as you increase the number of student athletes, you've got more level 1 coaches, you can sort of start to do some team-based OTBS 101s and then couple that with local first aid, and you can ramp up more coaches to be level 2s in a more quick fashion so that you can be a little bit more reactive as team expansion occurs. All right. Can you let head coaches know when training registration goes out so we can prod our level 1s to get registered? Absolutely, I can do that, Jim. That's a great idea. So I will give everyone that's a head coach and a team director a heads up that, hey, this has been shared out. And so please prod your level 1s to get registered ASAP. All right. As far as the coach supporter expansion, we'll be reaching out to teams. I've identified some teams that we will be looking at training some coach supporters for this go round and piloting that program to come up with our best practices and that sort of thing. So stay tuned on that, especially if you are a large team with more than 35 student athletes. All right. Just a reminder that Pit Zone is going to open up for team and coach registration on the 1st of September this year. That's going to be earlier than normal, and student athlete registration on October 1st. Then we have a couple of special topics. So the first one is 5th grade inclusion. So NICA is kind of rolling out a program of having 5th grade being a part of teams. And we're working through what that's going to look like, but we will be having this available this coming season. One of the things that I want to stress at the very beginning is that this is not something that you have to do. This is definitely something for bandwidth consideration. If you are maxed as you are, it's not going to be a great thing for you to kind of jump into. So we're very mindful of the fact that it's asking a lot of teams to sort of add a whole new grade span, new schools, that sort of thing. So we will have more information about this, but we just wanted to put it on everyone's radar that this is coming for the 2025 season. All right. Will 5th graders race making a whole new category? That is correct. They will have a separate category. There will not be any upgrading, anything like that. It's strictly 5th grade. So they will not be upgrading as 6th graders or MSA or anything like that. They'll just be racing graders. Jim.
Yeah, so Central Park was where my daughter went to school, and we actually had 5th graders on our team because it was a 5 through 8 middle school. And one of the things that we did was that for the 5th graders to participate, the parent had to coach. So that may be, it sounds like this is a slightly different thing with the 5th graders actually racing, but the hardest thing for middle school teams that are school-based is that kids show up in 6th grade, parent kind of gets into it, 7th grade, this is cool, 8th grade, they're a level 2, level 3, then they're gone. and you have to start it all over again. So I think it would be great to have fifth graders included, from the standpoint of it just gets those middle school parents involved earlier. And you might think about something along those same lines where how do you get those parents involved as coaches immediately in fifth grade? And that will help have middle school coaches available for those teams.
That's a great point, Jim. I appreciate you bringing it up. Yep, that's a great point.
The question is, does the season start October 15th, or is that not published yet? Brian, do you have a start date for the season yet?
I believe if we're talking the season, that will be 1 December like normal. For the preseason, that will start 1 October when registration opens. NICA has essentially realized that for some odd reason, spring leagues were on this weird 15th of the month timeline, and all the spring leagues open their seasons and preseasons on the 1st of the month. So we're just aligning. So yeah, just like you said, Sean, 1 September for teams, coaches, and then 1 October student athletes, and that will start our preseason is 1 October.
And then last but not least, NICA regionals will be occurring again in the fall. Do we have dates for that yet, Brian?
We do. It's essentially Veterans Day weekend, that Saturday, Sunday, and Monday, which is a little different from last year. It was a Friday, Saturday, Sunday setup. So it will be Saturday, Sunday, and Monday, and generally the same format as last year. The Saturday pre-ride and some adventure riding. Sunday will be the race, and folks are welcome to hang out Monday, do some more riding and some activities. The two differences for this year that I wanted to mention to everyone tonight, the qualification criteria to be invited to the championship race on that Sunday. When registration opens on 15 June, the top 30% of athletes in each category will be invited. I'm being told NICA will actually email those individuals come 15 June. So top 30% in our 2024 season categories will get an invitation to go. And then come 21 October, if there's any remaining space in those categories, it will be open to any athlete that wants to go race. Second difference this year is you do need to be practice ready come the regionals. That was different than last year. So you would have to be registered in pit zone with our league before you go. And then the last change from last year is our athletes will race in their 2025 categories up there. The graduated seniors are not allowed to participate. I know that's typically everyone's first question. I have tried and failed twice to get our graduated seniors to go compete. So my counter proposal was to let our kids compete in their 2025 categories with their other peers. NICA is in fact moving to an ability-based category system for the regionals. So the categories there will be JV3, JV2, JV1, and then varsity. And yes, it is only high school racing at the regionals, just like last year. So yeah, registration due to open 15 June. If you just want to go and ride and be a general participant, you can sign up right away. Don't have to qualify. But the racing will be restricted initially to our top 30% in each category.
Hey, Brian, this is Abby. I'm curious. I know you went last year. How do they do the call-ups for that, since they're from all over the place?
If I recall correctly, they did just the points comparison across the league results, if that makes sense, Abby, and that's how they did the call-ups and some form of alternate call-up, random order across the state leagues.
So upcoming freshmen are available for regionals is the question, and that would be a yes, given what you just said, that they will be competing in their 2025 categories. Is that correct, Brian?
That's correct. A ninth grader starting next school year will be eligible to compete in regionals.
All right. Other questions about regionals? Anything like that? Regionals is in Maryland, yes. All right. Any other questions or topics that anyone wanted to bring up this evening? to discuss?
I would like to ask from this garage, the weekend this season, that was the first time that we have the Saturday, or if you want to go for a ride, even on Saturday, you have to pay for the racing fee. Practically, even though that you don't want to race, right? Just to ride the course and to meet. There was kind of from our team, there was a couple kids, handful actually of the kids. There was kind of like even a bigger pushback, you know, to get in the racing. So is there anything for the next season to lift off this rule? Because, you know, like we, for example, Garrett Stover was one of the kids that was not in racing previous seasons, and he practically went on the Saturday event, right, and saw that everything, you know, and he was practically second in the league this season. If this would be not possible, he will be probably never show up on any race.
Okay. That's certainly something you can make that as a suggestion in your feedback for the season, and that can be considered for sure.
Okay, thank you.
Hey, Jan, just so I'm clear, are you arguing in favor of that process we did, or changing it back to
Changing it back? I think it's kind of like some of the kids, you know, they have a hesitation to go for the race. So what we did previous seasons, we kind of like motivate them. You don't have to race, right? Just come over, you can ride with us and everything. And if they like realize, some of the parents, they are, you know, like they realize even, oh, I don't know even what the kid will doing there, and just to pay, you know, like $25 or whatever it is, the fee, just to show up. And, you know, I don't know even if the kid wants to do anything. There was kind of like, you know, holding back the kids or the parents to go and to see even the event, which I think is pity. I don't know what was the motivation to make it this rule actually. Like if there was anything that I miss, you know, and make it better for you to organize everything, or if this was just.
So the main motivation was that there are costs associated with people attending. And so, you know, especially things like porta potties and all those sorts of things.
Oh, I see.
So it was kind of like, if we're going to have all these people, we do need to sort of like, we have to pay for all of these things to support them. So we kind of need help with that. And that was part of that motivation.
Well, I think it's multifaceted. Cost is one, but it was really, we made a good attempt to offer a lot more during the weekends for kids to participate in, and we got some positive feedback on those type of things. To Sean's point, it's also helpful to know exactly everyone who's coming, so we know who's on the venue. I do feel responsible for everyone that's coming, and I think you know, the counterpoint, yeah, not that I'm arguing with you, is just I do have other cases where those athletes not quite keen on racing who did come were, by Sunday they were ready to race and they jumped right in, and it was so easy to do because we knew they were coming and we had them on the call-ups, and they just got Sunday morning, just get a race done. It was kind of like game day decision. Sunday, like, okay, hey, you're on the list, not a problem, just come on staging and get right in. We had several cases like that, so that was kind of the other side of the argument for doing it, Jan. But I appreciate your.
No, understand. Can we like the idea of like our like one-time waiver? It could be something introduced like, hey, we can go like one time for free, you know, to try for Saturday or whatever. One time a season, you know, like then you limited the number of people, and you will have the motivation that some kid can pick. Okay, I want to visit this race to see how it looks like, with no obligation, you know. Just okay, I will put it some suggestion in the feedback.
Jan, this is Abby. The other thing we could do is we have scholarship money aside, and we could always, you know, for one race a season, pay for the student athletes to go on Saturday. Because we did have some student athletes that registered with not the intention of racing and then decided to race. But if the $25 or $35 is causing them to not do it, then we could offer that to our team. Because we have the money in the budget, but we could do that if it's not changed.
All right, I see David Larkins in the chat. The topic is weather decision making. So do you want to speak to that, David?
Yeah. So first off, I want to say that y'all are doing just an amazing job. This whole season was fantastic, incredibly well run, and I'm just super happy with how everything went. And I don't envy anybody's position in making these decisions about race cancellations due to weather. That said, you know, we only had 4 races again this year. And I had parents that went to the race venues on the 2 canceled weekends and sent me photos of how beautiful the weather was. And I know it's way, way more than just, you know, what is happening right at that moment. So it's not perfect decision making, but you know, as coaches, as parents, as student athletes, we are investing a lot in this season. We're investing a lot in NICA and racing with this league. We plan our weekends around, you know, these race events months and months ahead of time. And I just feel like the feedback that I've gotten from my parents was they would rather go to the venue, maybe get some ride time in on Saturday, maybe race, maybe have the race canceled, you know, the morning of, but at least have tried, as opposed to finding out on Thursday afternoon that it's canceled. And then the coaches are like scrambling to figure out, what should we do? Should we have a practice? Should we have some other thing? Like, we're trying to put something together. It's a real mess for everybody. And I think a lot of my kids, the feedback that I got was, I would rather go to the event, maybe participate in some portion of it, and then have the things canceled that have to be canceled for safety concerns or for, you know, serious concerns about deterioration of the venue.
So one thing that I'd like to ask is, have you seen the video that we made about how weather decisions are made that's on our YouTube channel?
I have, yeah. And
Okay.
I'm aware of like the committee and yes.
Yeah. So at least you've got sort of the background of what that process is like. And so, yeah, I think that sort of, number one, you know, we're not quick to cancel races, and it's not what we want to do by any stretch of the imagination. We understand the difficulties that places on teams, as well as our own team. So it's one thing to kind of think about too. So, but Brian, is there anything that you want to add to that discussion, or just take this under advisement for next year?
I think the other things I would add is I am seriously considering some rain dates for us next season. I mean, even if and David, I appreciate the real honest feedback, but let's just go for a minute here and saying it was a bad decision per se to cancel one of those races because it was great that weekend. You know, having a rain date, you know, lets us do it again. Anyway, it gives us some more flexibility. So I've got that certainly under advisement. I'm also thinking about how we can maybe, I know the no refund policy was not popular with many people. Maybe I can extend the registration later into the week somehow so people aren't quote unquote trapped by the decision late in the week, so to speak. So there's a couple things we can do for next season to give us some more flexibility to get around the lovely springtime North Carolina weather. But
Yeah,
David, thank you for the just honest feedback. That's what we're here for, man. So I appreciate it.
And I mean, if there's any way that the decision can be delayed, you know, another day, like we're locked into these weekends. You know, as soon as that race calendar comes out, it goes on my calendar. It goes on my other coaches' calendars. You know, we've blocked it off. We're not making other plans, and so like to be in a position where like we essentially are not able to gather at all. Anything that we could do to make it more likely for us to be able to gather at least for a portion of the weekend would be appreciated.
All right. Other feedback or topics for discussion?
I'm I'm curious about the wristbands. What you guys are thinking about those? If that was a good thing or maybe like were they actually monitored? And I don't know. To me, it just seemed like a little bit of excess of stuff to keep up with and keep track of. And we had a couple, Brian was there for like a freak out moment of not having a wristband on a kid because they weren't there Saturday. And it felt like one more thing as a head coach to keep track of. And I'm just wondering how, like, did you actually monitor like kids getting on the course without a wristband and then they didn't pay? And like, are they really necessary? It just feels like a lot of it's extra material, money, and management.
I'd say,
All right.
Abby, we certainly didn't, establish the wristband police and probably heavily enforce it, although it was helpful to know everyone that was registered per that previous discussion about we're having everyone register. And I think it was helpful for those activities like trail work and other like programs areas where you weren't on the bike. We knew a kid was registered because race plate, as you know, has been our way to do that. I think, based on the number of questions we got this weekend, Abby, about getting extra wristbands, hugely popular with the kids. Maybe not for the coaches. So I take your point, but man,
Yeah.
we're getting questions like everyone wanted the season collection of
Right.
wristbands. Oh yeah, and Shell giving them away left and right. So I think it was our best attempt to account for the everyone registers for the weekend and a way to identify those kids. So
Right.
we'll give it some more thought as to
Okay.
crack that nut for next season. But that's kind of my view right now on it, Abby.
Okay. Oh, stickers are more expensive. That's interesting.
Yeah,
I would think
that was one of
wristbands
the
would
things
be,
early on.
yeah. Huh. Okay.
And it was funny this weekend. I saw kids that had like all the wristbands and they were like describing each event that it was and like talking to their teammates about it. So it was pretty interesting. Some of them were really into it. But as always, like the end of the season for us is when we start to consider all the things that we did, what needs improvement, what needs to change, all those sorts of things. So absolutely.
Well, and I guess if it's not going to, I mean, I took it seriously. Like if they didn't have a wristband and they're pulling up to the start line, we had a lot of running around and freaking out when, if we're not actually, if nobody's going to say you can't race if you don't have a wristband, because clearly they're signed up and they got called up, then that's great. I don't need to have those moments of losing it.
Major stress. Yeah.
Yeah.
No problem.
Yeah.
All right. I don't want to keep everybody past 9 o'clock, but if there is more that you want to talk about, we are all ears.
Yeah, I would like to thank you to the whole team for this nice events, and whole season was fantastic. Really, really fantastic job from everybody who is organizing the races and everything. Thank you again. This was really, really nice season.
Thank you for that. Just a quick question. Are the character awards posted anywhere? Those will be posted. Brian, you'll be posting that along with team awards and all of that sort of thing.
Yeah, all the
in next
season
few days.
all the season awards will go out in the event report by Thursday, and then that will then be linked to the website as soon as the event report is out. Yep.
All right, everyone. Thank you so much for another great season. And we will be hard at work getting ready for the next season. So stay tuned. And I appreciate all of you joining us on this call this evening. You have a good night.
Thanks, everyone.